first part of this is about death omens. And death omens are a really interesting thing, the association with crows and ravens. Now, there is something added to this piece that you're going to watch that I will add in before. So, actually, interestingly, the death omen is less associated with a hooded crow, up, you know, where we are, than it is with ravens and black crows. Now, obviously, that is mainly driven by the colour. It unfortunately has labelled them really quite incorrectly, and while it's, you know, it's lovely for us to look back and go, oh, you know, these myths and legends, death omens and all the rest of it, unfortunately, in reality, when that passes over into the real world, it means that they are persecuted because of that, and they really shouldn't be, because actually what they are is our cleaners, and they have been our cleaners for, well, since the birth of humanity, right? The whole thing is an interesting notion, and absolutely we should look back on it as that's, you know, that's in history, that's how we saw it, but this is now the 21st century, and we need to start moving away from this kind of these ideas that aren't applicable. Hello, Rags, mate. That aren't applicable really, and actually cause more problems than anything else. So, you know, when people call these birds dirty, they are not dirty, believe me. They are just not dirty. Take a parrot. Parrot is dirty, but corvids really aren't. They are incredibly clean creatures, and you also have to remember, because they are carrion, they have to be extra clean to make sure that they are not going to be susceptible to infections and other things whilst going through carrion. It is unfortunately another human take on watching or observing wildlife and getting it completely wrong. I mean, utterly wrong. And it's a bit sad really when we get to those situations, because it always ends up in humans persecuting the animal. Death omens. Why are corvids, particularly ravens and crows, associated with death? In the modern era, it's to do with the colour, black, associates with mourning, but also they are, you know, historically known for going over battlefields and places where corpses were piled up, basically, and eating them. So there is an association. They would hang around where there is death. Excuse me? And when you go a bit further back into history, them being seen to eat human flesh kind of gave them an association, or gave humans the association that what they were was consuming the soul or parts of that human and then carrying it off. So I think this myth sort of evolved around them being, yeah, I know, around them being carriers of the, I mean, some cultures, they're carriers of the dead. They carry them over the threshold to the afterlife. Others, soul eaters. So there's always been an association with them, because that's what they are. They're carrion. You know, they see a dead bit of something or other, they'll have it, because they're opportunists. It's a bad reputation, unfortunately, because now we can look at it with modern eyes and go, they're cleaners. That's what they're doing. They're not, you know, there is no association particularly with death. However, I will say that when you work closely with them, there is something very, very, what's the word? I don't want to use the word paranormal, because it immediately just pseudoscience, right? But they're able to predict. They can also seem to be able to telepathically communicate to a degree. They can certainly predict future events. Not, you know, not like 2 years' time, but relatively short-term future events. Now, I don't fully understand why. I don't fully understand how I'm able to communicate with Rags through this, what would be classed as telepathy. Virtually no communication. I know what he's thinking. He knows what I'm thinking. The same with Frith. I can link into that, but I haven't looked into it. I don't understand why, but I observe the behavior, so I use the behavior to help. Got to be able to read your raven, right? If you can't read your raven, then you shouldn't have your raven. So the next piece you're going to watch a little bit is about, this is quite interesting, it's about weight, but it also goes on to explain about actually left and right. Now, this I learned many, many years ago, that the Corvids that I deal with, so I mean, you do remember, I mean, I'm talking about Corvids, so this probably references many other things. Sorry, it's crazy because Rafe's just being an idiot. So it probably references many other creatures, but I don't know because I've not done the studies. So I'm only really going to talk about the studies that I've done. Now, Corvids have preferences, left or right. So they're very much like humans. You know, they're left-hand or right-hand bias. So Frith, for example, will not sit on my left shoulder. She just won't do it, and never has. She will never, ever jump up on my left arm. Even if I offer it, she'll just refuse. I then immediately offer my right arm, she will hop up. And we don't really understand why this is. It can be sometimes to do with injuries, for example, or eyesight. So if their eyesight is poor, they'll prefer to come to something they trust and sit on the side where the poor eyesight faces the thing that they trust and the good eyesight faces outwards. But in Frith's case, we don't think that's the case. We think she just favours the right side. And that's what she does. She will, interestingly, go on other people on either side, but me, she'll only choose the right side. Even when Rags is not with me, she will always only pick the right side. Rags reserves the left-hand side and won't let anyone else sit there. Now, there are a couple of others who do that. Morgan will sit on the left side with when Rags isn't around. So he shares the left side as well with Rags. But the wild one, Jeremy, for example, who has been on me, doesn't have any favouritism at all. He will just go anywhere, and mainly on my head, actually, which I suppose is the central point, right? But yeah, so it is a very interesting thing, but they absolutely do have left and right hand bias, and it's from birth. It's just that's the way they are. Sorry, I've got Rags and Rafe playing today. Can I feel him on my shoulder? And no, not really. I know he's there, but he's not heavy. He's heavy on my arm, particularly when I'm carrying a selfie stick and a phone. He does weigh quite a bit. But yeah, he's fine. And interestingly, so that my left shoulder, which is the shoulder he sits on, is reserved for, weirdly, kind of the special birds. The birds that, I don't know, it's very difficult. So all of the birds that I had a very, very close affinity with, like very close, they always have used my left side. So Rags will not sit on my right shoulder or go on my right arm. Now Frith, interestingly, will absolutely not go on my left side. So if I present my left arm and say, hop up, she'll just refuse. Present my right arm, she'll hop up. But also, when you see any video of me around and about with a single raven that's on my shoulder, it's always Rags. Frith does not walk on shoulders. She will stand still. If I'm standing still, she'll stand on my shoulder briefly. She will not walk on shoulders. Yeah, so this next piece is a question I get asked a lot about music. Music really drives me, and always has. I mean, I can't remember a time I didn't have music on in the background. I have music playing when I walk, I have music playing with whatever I'm doing. It just helps me, kind of visualize things, it helps in my imagination, it helps my kind of dream state, which helps with everything that I do. But it's transferred onto the birds, and it's something I did notice with all of the animals I've ever dealt with, dogs and cats and birds and ferrets and everything that I've had in the past. It has always helped. But when I got to the ravens, I noticed it really has an impact, a huge impact. So Rags is obsessed with music. So when I first met Rags, he was a very disturbed bird, and I had a long journey ahead of me. It was a 15-hour journey. and he was just sitting with me. We bonded very quickly in about 20 minutes. But all the way back, we listened to music, and one song kept coming up, and it was a Wardruna song. I think it was no, it wasn't. It's a Danhelm song, and it became his favourite. It's like when it comes on Spotify every now and again, because I just put on this playlist and it just plays whatever, and that comes on, and he gets very, very excited. Rags. It conjures up this memory. Now, I have memory associated with music, but so does Ragnar. So he's able to hang on to memories that are years old, and brings back those emotions when he hears those bits of music. He is affected by what it is. I mean, the other day I was out with him. It's a cold day, and I'd finished my walk, and I came back to the van, and he was just messing around in the van as he does. And Coldplay came on, and it was I can't remember the song. I really can't remember the song, but it's a gentle, quite sweet song that Coldplay did. And he hopped up on my arm and wanted a cuddle. And he just buried himself in me, and we just had a little cuddle whilst listening to this song. So the tempo and the meaning of the song, the general meaning of the song, really has an impact on Rags, and it affects his mood. And he will behave in a way that the song sort of dictates you would, just like a human would. You know, some songs bring us to tears. Kind of does the same with Rags. At the moment, he's going through a Green Day stage where he just loves Green Day. I put Green Day on and he'll just listen to it, and it cheers him up no end. And then he's full of life after he's listened to his Green Day songs. And he's got some favourites. When September comes, and whatever the other one is, Brain something or other. But yeah, he's really got some favourites. It's very sweet. So, as I mentioned in the video that you're about to watch, there are lots and lots of studies that have been done, particularly around classical music, and particularly around Beethoven, and the fact that it does have an impact on not just animals, but also plants. So it is a creation that humans invented that really is beneficial to our planet, and seems to be beneficial to lots of living organisms. But also, I mean, if you look at the moment, what they're doing is some research into listening to plants and transferring the noise that plants make into music, and they actually seem to create some sort of harmonious music. Now, we do have to be very careful with this and how to interpret it, but there seems to be something there that links us and our love of music and the natural world that creates natural music and natural rhythm. And it really does. I mean, I've got a hydrophone and I listen to underwater sounds sometimes, and there is a rhythm to it. It's rather remarkable. So music is an interesting one. It's something I've always used with animals. Classical music has sort of been experimented on and sort of proven to be very beneficial. Not all. And I love classical music. And I love music, all genres, but I like to have classical music on in the background. Just creates a homely, warm, cozy environment that there's always something going on quietly. So when I don't put music on in the mornings, and I forget sometimes, it's noticeable. They all stand around waiting for the music to go on. And it's like I've forgotten. They'll tell me, you've forgotten to put the music on. So Rags is really obsessed with music, more than most. He likes classical music. He likes traditional music. They're his favourite genres. He likes things like Green Day and Viking type music, mainly because that's got ravens in it and he likes to hear ravens. But yeah, it's part of behavioural sort of psychology with them. So anything that I can use and adapt into their world that helps them feel calm and relaxed, that's what I do, because it's really, really important. Gilbert, get off the screen. It's not your film. Stop hijacking it. So this next piece you're going to watch is about communication, and this is something that's a very big subject, so I probably haven't done it justice in this film. And I will be going on to expand on this subject because it's really, really important. This, I think, relates to not just the human condition and the fact that we have isolated ourselves, but also relates to the fact that with communication, carefully built communication through understanding and not interpreting it necessarily in a human context, but joining somewhere in the middle with the animal that we're talking about, just improves things. It really does. You know, the last thing we'd want to do, right, if we go to hospital, is not be able to communicate because things go wrong. So it's really, really important when we think about that. When we're looking after animals, it's the same principle. You have to build communication. And if you haven't built communication, you can't understand what's going on. So when the animal becomes ill or starts to show signs that, you know, you've got question marks over, the normal practice is run it to the vet, do a load of procedures. Probably, you know, 80% of those procedures won't show anything, but they're still invasive procedures. And I think it's really important that we can start kind of avoiding this hit and miss approach by actually communicating with the birds. So, for example, you know, Rags gets his poorly wing every now and again. He gets an ingrowing feather. Now, he will actually tell me when that is becoming sore and he wants it removed, which saves me the bother of having to go through every other problem that he might have. But also, Rags has learnt to manipulate that situation. So because he knows that he can tell me he's ill, and I will go, oh no, you're ill, and he can use that to get attention, and he does. And it turns out he's not ill, he just wanted attention. And sometimes he gets me with it. But the point about the communication that I'm developing with them is it's not human communication, and it's not raven communication. All right, mate, this is negativity, because I'm talking to the camera and he wants attention. What this is me observing consistently the species that I'm dealing with and understanding vocally what they're saying or vocally what they're trying to express, but also body language. But with the vocals, what I then do is I mimic the vocals back to them, and then we meet somewhere in the middle and create a communication. So I've developed with Ragnar and Frith to a certain degree points of communication where I can actually talk to them and they can actually communicate back. Now, when I say talk, I'm not like this. This is not how I communicate with them. And when you see me on camera when I'm talking to Rags and I say, you know, Rags, what? That's real basic stuff. That's just the basic me having a chat with Rags. It's very difficult to record the actual communication that goes on. So I will use a set of vocals to communicate with him and Frith, and they are different vocals for them. It's not a universal raven vocalization that we're using. It's built specifically for each bird. But actually, the thing is that about 70% of the communication that you'll get from Corvids, for example, and particularly ravens, is body language. And you have to relate the body language to what's going on in the environment around them to be able to understand what it all means. And that's a really, really key thing. And a lot of people kind of miss that, you know, you have to think about it, right? When birds are out in the wild and they're communicating through body language, which can be done over quite a good distance, what they're basically, the one that's watching the one communicate is understanding is environment, right? It's sitting in a tree, there's a hawk flying 2 miles away over that way that they've spotted. And what that's a context, you know, they give a flick, they flick their wings, they give a fairly standard level of communication that can be interpreted in multiple different ways. But actually in that context, it means there's a bit of danger over there, everyone watch out. And that's what contextualization means. And it's really, really important to understand that. So, you know, Rags will do fart tickles when he's out, and that's, as you know, as I discussed in this video, it's a happy communication. But you have to then put it into a context of what he's actually seeing or what he's involved with at the time. And a lot of it is split-second communication. You know, he says something, or his vision is attracted by something. I'll look in that direction and go, right, I know what you're talking about. And there'll be a body language communication that goes no further. We don't need to vocalise about it. But it also goes as far as I'm able to predict him and he's able to predict me. And Frith is able to predict me, but I'm less able to predict her with communication and understanding what Frith's going on about. So sometimes Frith will go, what's that, out when I'm out with her? And I really don't know what she's freaking out about, because I don't entirely, Frith arrived much later with us, so I don't entirely know what she's pointing at, because she's not got to the point where she's prepared yet to allow me to sort of understand, this is what I'm looking at, this is what scares me, this is what I'm bothered about. It's like her agoraphobia at the moment, or her agoraphobia that she's always carried since she's been here, creates issues because she's basically freaking out about the whole environment. So to pinpoint what the actual problem is makes it quite difficult. And that's why it's really important for Frith to develop this communication with me very closely, like Rags, so that she can express to me, this is a problem, and I can address the problem with her. Just blindly going out with her in the vague hope that she might get over it one day doesn't work, and it never will, because they suffer with neophobia. So the really important, once those phobias are in place, they're very hard to remove, unless you know exactly what they're talking about or communicating to you, and that's really vital. So this is why I think communication with species that we deal with is a big key thing. And it's something I believe that we were very attuned into before modernization and before we developed all these myths and legends, as I spoke about earlier in this, around birds, and put them in a box, basically, and said this is what they are and then no more. It's done a lot with horses and training horses when they're trained very well. They use communication, and the trainers will always understand what the horse is going on about, or the horse is having an issue with. And when that's done, you get a really productive relationship. It's done with dogs and cats, all sorts of our pets. And lots of people do it, but it really isn't going down into the common practice, which I believe it should be. I don't actually believe that anyone should have one of these guys, even in a rescue situation, if you can't understand how to develop the communication with them, because you will make consistent mistakes, misjudge situations, and potentially make situations worse if you not only don't know the basics of care, but also cannot communicate when they're saying to you, I've got a problem. Now, ravens, I will just also mention this while I'm on it. Ravens absolutely suffer with what is classed in human terms as Stockholm Syndrome, and they really do. And I think I go on to explain this a bit later on in these videos. And that is a really important thing, because that can mask communication, because they're not communicating correctly when they feel that way. They're just in love with their captors, and they don't know anything else. So their communication is not clear in those situations, and never will be until they're taken out of that Stockholm situation and presented with a situation where they can freely communicate what the problem is. I've dealt with birds like this, and normally when you remove them from those situations, they change immediately, and you develop a communication, and they will tell you what the problem is. It's like, you can't hide from me with the guys that I handle, because I don't listen to the human. I will take on board what the human has said about their history, etc., etc., but the bird won't lie. Plain and simple. And the bird, I can even see it in videos and photographs when birds are miserable or depressed, and the communication isn't there, because the human's just doing what they want to do without any consideration for the bird. And that's where lack of communication happens. That's where things go wrong. That's right, isn't it, Rags? So Rags' speech. Right, okay. So this I'm going to get into properly. Speech in ravens. Now I'm going to only talk about this from my point of view. What I'm trying to do. So what I'm trying to do is create the ability to properly cross-species communicate. So that doesn't mean taking an interpretation, putting my interpretation on that at all. It means trial and error. It means taking what I witness and putting it into a context that the bird understands and I can understand. And it's a big thing for me, this. about communication. And the reason why is because I believe you can provide better care with very good communication. So if the animal can tell you what the problem is, you can provide for the animal. But also they can tell you whether they're happy or sad, and what emotion they're going through. So I don't train them to develop this language. This is their own. Rags, we'll take Rags for a start, because Rags is a good example. It's sitting on my shoulder right now, right? And I've had other ravens that I've developed the same communication with. But Rags is the best example. And Rags has engaged in it in probably to the highest level I've ever witnessed. So Rags's communication is about, well, what is your communication about, Rags? Fart, fart, tickle, tickle, fart, fart, tickle. There's some screeches in between. So Rags's tickle came about from me tickling him when he was a youngster, because his health was always a concern when he was young, because we didn't know his background. Well, it was Rags, because we didn't really know his background or anything like that. So I used to do health checks with him regularly. I still do every now and again. But when I used to flip him over to calm him down, he'd sit in my lap on his back, and I would tickle him. Tickle, 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 tickle. Tickle, 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 tickle. And I didn't realise that he was picking up that. But then what he did was he picked up the tickle, tickle as a mimic, and then converted it to mean something. So he then decided it was his expression of happiness. So that's him happy. So that's contextually happy. So you have to look at what context he's in. If he's out for a walk, then he's tickle, tickle, tickling, because he's just super, super happy to be out for a walk. And he can also point things out to me and say, tickle, tickle, tickle. Or if say, are we going in that direction, Rags, or that direction? He'll go tickle, 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 and we're going in tickle, tickle, that direction. So he uses it to express positivity and happiness. Now his is negativity. And that is a normal raven noise. So it's actually something he picked up off Frith, because obviously he didn't live with another raven when he was first with us. So when Frith came, he very quickly learnt that noise, which for him means negativity. Now with Frith, the same noise means something completely different. And that's why you have to decipher what each animal is doing, what each animal is interpreting the same noise as. So, goodness me, it's windy, Rags. It's properly windy, mate. All over the place, look. The trees wobbling around all over the place, mate. We're in a little lull here. So he has other noises. His fart noise, for example. Now, his fart noise is actually a raven noise. You hear some ravens make it quite a lot. Now, he just loves the noise. But it all started... it actually all started with my wife. When we go out for walks occasionally together, which we don't do that often because of work, etc., etc. But we were out with Rags, and she was talking to him, and she talks to him a lot, and he talks to her a lot. And they were just talking, and Rags started doing at her. And we couldn't work out why he was doing it. And we realised that what he was doing was telling my wife it was windy that day. It was a windy day. And that's how he started to form that association with that word. He then realised, while we're all falling about laughing at him for making stupid fart noises, he then realised it was funny. So he then put a joke together. And his joke is when it's not windy and he does it, it's funny because he's making fart noises. And when it's windy, he's just telling me it's windy and he thinks it's funny. It's a dad joke. I mean, it's a proper dad joke that he's done to death. But, there you go. But now, we don't know how he's done it, because we don't do it in response to him. But somehow he makes wet fart noises. He makes all sorts of weird fart noises. And this is his own invention. He's created this language for himself to express what he feels. So when he does tickle, 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 fart, he's super happy and telling jokes, basically. So he has a lot more noises that don't necessarily come out on camera. He does say hello, but he's always very quiet. So, hello. He's very, very sweet when he says hello. He can say no, but he doesn't use it necessarily in the context of no, because he will revert back to his negative noise to mean no. He does a lot of grumbles, and Now that's general chit-chat and communication that's very standard between ravens. So he uses the same chit-chat to me, and I've learned from him to mimic him so we can have a chat. And again, I have to look at the context that we're having this conversation in as to what he's talking about. So for instance, when I sit on the bench with him and he's sitting next to me and I'm doing some filming, and we're basically just having a chat about how, all right, mate, how you doing? I'm all right. And it's that sort of conversation. Now, my whole mission with this is to prove that all ravens are capable of this. All ravens are capable of that level of communication to human, so interspecies communication, to a very high level. And my proof is going to be, unfortunately I didn't video the last one. My proof is going to be Frith. So Frith, I'm going to visually show everyone that she, in her own way, can be as communicative as Rags is. Now, if I can prove that that's two visually on video can do the same thing through their own learning and interpretation of the world, that means that all of them can do it. Now, if you think about that on a grand scheme of things, that suggests a lot, because it suggests that we can work a lot closer with these birds. We can start understanding their needs and their wants, and not just our desires, and put that on them. Because a lot of this current ownership of ravens, for example, is putting our desires onto them. I want to go here, so the raven's coming with me. I want to walk down a high street because I want to show off my raven. Well, it's got nothing to do with the raven's wants, because you haven't asked it. Just ask it. It's like, I asked Rags, do you want to come out today? He went, yeah, I do. Some days I ask him, he doesn't want to go out. No, you did want to go out today. So yeah, that's communication. And I do it with the smaller ones. I do it with Morgan and Gilbert, and Elsie not so much. Elsie, because she was 8 years in the wild, came back. She really was very much an in-ground crow. So we just go with her. She does talk and she will communicate and she will grumble, but she never got the chance to develop that language. It's interesting. I see that some people are observing the same thing. That I get the odd comment that says, I've just been cronked at by a raven, or clicked at by a raven, or a crow, who's genuinely seems to be talking to me. And I will say this: they absolutely are talking to you. So turn around and engage. Just engage in a conversation with them. And you may look like an idiot standing on the road having a conversation with a tree, but the bird is actually talking to you. So do engage with wild animals, because why not? We must stop this segregation between our species, and we mustn't communicate or anything like that with wild animals. Communicate with wild animals, because if you develop a communication, the animal develops a communication. There is a symbiosis there that really, really helps, and it really does. So yeah, that's what it is. The smaller guys, the communication is very different because they're less good at mimicry. So you have to really go with their natural sounds and vocals and body language displays and everything like this to understand them. They are actually more difficult to get a communication going with them. But I have succeeded with Gilbert and Morgan to a degree, although Morgan is an absolute narcissist. So you kind of don't really know where you've got to with Morgan. But yeah, that's where we are. I would have loved to have tried it with Rafe, but it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for me to interact with Rafe on that level. He already farts and tickles, which I will just say, he's very likely to go into the wild within about 12 months. That'll have gone, because he'll be around normal ravens, and they will be talking normal things, and he'll just forget it. It's not necessarily ingrained into him at all. Although Rags is very desperate to teach him proper fart, tickle. He spent what was it, Friday, Rags, you spent about 3 hours teaching them. They just stand next to each other and Rags just goes fart, fart, tickle, fart, fart, tickle. And Rafe repeats it back to him and it's like Rags goes, I'll give you 8 out of 10 for that one. And then they do it again. Proper teaching. He's been a very, very good dad. A very good dad. It surprised me, actually, how good a dad he's actually been. And Frith has just been incredible with Rafe. Absolutely remarkable. It has, unfortunately, had a little bit of a detrimental effect on Frith's ability to go out. But I can work on that. Frith's got many years ahead of her, so that's not a major issue for Frith if she misses out a few months. The important thing is that Rafe has got a 40-year lifespan ahead of him, or a 25 or 35-year lifespan ahead of him. So everything we can do for him to make him have a brilliant life would be fantastic. So my guys do sacrifice a little bit for these guys, you know, the wild guys, but that's fair enough. Oh, right, that's that done. Right, so yeah, the last part of this is about really just a bit about sort of why. I mean, I've always personally had a love of birds, a love of wildlife, but particularly birds have always sort of been drawn to me, and I've been drawn to them. You know, sometimes you find that you have something that particular species feeds off, or feels it can interact with, or immediately trust, and that's what I've had. And you know, I've done other things in my life. But when I came here, I rescued a little crow. The crow then taught me a huge amount of just information around them, intelligence, but also anatomy and all sorts of things. And while I had her, I rescued a few birds and sort of just kind of, that's what I did. And that's all I do. It's very quietly. If I'm, you know, the rescue rehab work is small, you know, because I believe it's the lucky few. And we shouldn't help everything because we add to the problem that we are facing. Gilbert, you've been told. That's kind of the rehab side of it. That's really what it was. It just, I learnt from this crow and from others what was needed from them and how to fix them and give them the best lives, and that was it. But then I met some ravens and stuff, and then I learned that there's a problem because ravens are in pet trade as well as all the other corvids. But ravens, because they are such highly intelligent creatures, need specialist care. And they do. I mean, you know, they're just not pets. And I mean that in the truest sense. That includes not taking them to inappropriate places and doing inappropriate things with them. You know, it's all about this care of high sentience. And I realised that because they were in the pet trade, there's obviously going to be a problem, like we have with dogs and cats and everything else that gets abandoned or lost or neglected or mistreated. And that's when I realised I could give something back, give something substantial back, by giving what would be, what I'm beginning to realise, and I'm hoping other people are beginning to realise, are highly intelligent individual creatures, their lives back, or a better life than they would have ever hoped to have had, the best possible life that was given to them by humans. Well, that doesn't sound good. Yeah, I just need to watch out for falling trees here. Why does that sound really... Let me just move from underneath that tree. Yeah, and that's what it is. So, you know, I do... You know, Rafe is a wild rescue, and there's... hang on. My general thing is rewilding, right? To whatever degree is necessary. So with the pet industry birds, it's rewilding them to a point where they know they're ravens. They can exist as ravens if they choose, so they can actually choose between the two lives, domesticated and raven. And it's their choice. It's their I open up their world for them in a domestic case. In wild birds, I rewild them back to the wild. I mean, I have trained other people's birds. Unfortunately, I can't be responsible for what happens to the bird after it gets taken back out of my care. Anyway, it makes me very sad, but there you go. And that's what I do. I'm able to take very damaged birds, and in pet industry birds, very, very wild birds that can't cope with human captivity, but they have to live in human captivity because that's what they are, pets. You know, it's illegal to release them. And I'm able to bring them down to a level where they can be, you know, handled and interacted with. And that's really important. But it's a very difficult thing to do. You see, this is why, I mean, that's it. That's where I come from. That's what I am. Everything I have is self-learned through sometimes trial and error, through an awful lot of reading, research, study of the real thing, understanding. I mean, we've dealt with a lot of end-of-life care with Corvids that, you know, come to our garden and needed help, and they are just end of life. And we have learned, you know, what they've done is they've taught me, as well as I've learned from them. I mean, I've helped them. I'm getting confused there. I helped them and they've helped me to understand their particular problem. So I've ended up having dealt with most problems. I have a keen understanding of what problems we should deal with, what we shouldn't deal with, and that's where it's all come from. But I chose to do something. The reason I've chosen to live with these guys as a flock member is because I think it's really, really important to be able to harvest that information. I said it before, harvest that information and feed it out to other people who don't have the ability to live as flock members, and proving how adequate or inadequate the care that they're receiving is, given how intelligent and how I'm proving their individuality. And I hope it just helps people address their care and their understanding of what they're doing. And that's really what it is. My legacy, I would love my legacy to have made a difference in this raven world, not only in the pet industry, but in the rewilding of injured ravens, and how we can do this with 100% success rate and also a bit extra. So we can actually add a bit extra in. Because I'm even beginning to form an idea that there is a possibility of creating a communication between certain ravens, which means that they actually have an understanding of what humans expect from them out in the wild. And that it's way more complicated than that. But it might resolve some of the human to corvid issues that have been going on. But I haven't really thought about it in any great depth. It's just a thought that keeps occurring in my head that I haven't thought out yet particularly well. And that's it, really. And I'd love to leave this legacy of understanding, I would love ultimately for people to sort of understand these guys are too intelligent to be kept as pets. It's not fair. Not fair on them. I've said it before. I just find very, very few people are going to be prepared to put 40 years of their life to one side to care for these, and the degree of care that they need. And the degree of care that they need is extensive. I mean, they've got to go out. Pardon? It sounded like a ruler twanging. They've got to get out. They've got to do as much as they can within their capabilities. And it's up to the humans to teach them those capabilities and to take their point of view. And a lot of what I'm doing is taking the bird's point of view. That's why I'll never take Rags to, into the village or go to a cafe or anything like that. I'd never think of doing it with him because it would be inappropriate for him. There's no reason for to see a raven walking down a high street, for example. There is no fundamental reason for it. It benefits no one but the people. And I disagree with that because it's not looking at it from the bird's point of view. Care is really important. And I want this to all, there's multiple things I want addressed. And I just hope by giving out this information, it works. And that's kind of where I am. Noticed the problem, wanted to fix the problem. But it was born for me on a more personal level. It was born out of not the best history with animals, as far as working in some industries that were entirely exist to kill animals and put them on our plate. And that personally broke me. I couldn't, kind of woke up one day and went, I can't do that. And I need to do something else. And I need to make amends and get redemption for what I did. This is my redemption. 40 years of these guys, which is a privilege and a curse at the same time. I will say that, but that's what it is. I believe I wouldn't do it unless I didn't believe that there was something in this to be able to prove a point. And the point is really vital. It's not just the point about ravens, which is why sometimes I discuss other things that aren't about ravens. Personal notes, interesting things, because it's about condition, both the human condition. Get out of the bag. I know what you're doing. There's nothing in it. You haven't been flying. Well, you did once, but you didn't. It wasn't exactly a flight, Max. And it's not an excuse to have your carcass. I forgot what I was saying. I don't know, anyway. That's the general idea, so it's completely put me off there. What? You're having a right old holler out there, Rags. What? Oh, Rags. What? Who's that? Is that Rags? Oh, goodness me, look at you, Rags. How handsome are you? Rags. Who's that? Whoa. What? Four. Rags. Four. Four. What a handsome chap you are, man. You're looking particularly dapper today, actually. It's because you've been rained on, snowed on, then blow-dried in the wind. You're looking particularly good. Oh, dear. But it's why you see, I mean, eventually I would the ultimate goal with what I would love to be, if I could end my days in a sanctuary, not personally in a sanctuary, because I don't think I need homing in a sanctuary, but if I could end my days having built a sanctuary and helped wild birds rehabilitate back into the wild, but again, the lucky few that need to be rewilded, that would add something back into the environment, an important, thing back into the environment. I think it would be a wonderful thing. But my fixation is on ravens. You see, I have less of an issue with crows and rooks and things like this. They're slightly easier to please. They're also smaller in scale, so they're slightly easier to handle as well. And they can be very tough as well. Less of an issue, also their lifespans are shorter than ravens. I have a really big issue with such long-lived creatures in captivity for no particularly good reason other than the human wants it. If the human wants it, there's something seriously amiss, because it can't be about just the human. It has to be about the bird also wanting to exist and really wanting to exist. And a lot of people don't read ravens right. They're very complex creatures to read. They really, really are. You can see it visually with ravens, how comfortable they are. So I can give you some happy ravens. You've got Loki the raven, very happy raven. The body language says incredibly happy, very comfortable. And given his background, from what I understand, that is a huge achievement by, I can't remember the guy's name. Great admiration for the guy. Hello, little one. Robins, that's unusual. Little robins come. And then you've got Fable the raven. You can tell by her body language how she behaves, that she's so comfortable and so happy. She really is, and the way she interacts, and she's very much, I mean, Rags is very similar to her because Rags used Fable's videos to learn how to be him. But you can just tell by the body language. It's very, very obvious. Same with Rags and Frith around me. They've got all this body language, and they want to interact with you, and they're just super, super happy. And then you've got I think SMJ Falconry. They've got Mabel the Raven, who just is so enthusiastic for life. It's wonderful to see, and her condition is outstanding. I'm not kidding. I mean, I've never been there. I don't know. I don't particularly know them, but judging by the bird's condition, my goodness me, that bird's looked after. And she's a display bird. She's and I don't have a problem with that because the bird's actually getting huge amounts out of life. It's these birds, these ravens that are kept in captivity, true captivity, barely get out. They're living in unsanitary, non-appropriate, environments for their skill set, their brain, it's just they're not living in good environments. I tend to find those ravens are kept because the person wants to keep them and has no interest in the birds' want to exist. And it shows. They're not happy birds. They don't exhibit any happy behaviors at all. They may cuddle up and things like that, but that's like Stockholm syndrome, and it does exist. It's exactly the same as human experiences of Stockholm syndrome. Exactly the same. In fact, it's slightly easier with ravens because they're under our control, right? So we can interpret how they behave as being, oh, gorgeous, gorgeous, I love you, and it's not. It's you're my captor and I have no choice. But if they don't exhibit gregarious, nutty, crazy behavior, it's not a happy raven. There's a few of them. There's a few of them publicly you can go and search. There are people I've been associated with that have them. I will just make sure you understand that I am no longer associated with those people. It makes me very sad, but that's where the problem lies, right? Those birds need better lives, and I would love to have this amazing sanctuary and have people who want to come and learn how to communicate and how to understand the deep psychology of this particular species and then carry that on, but also apply that into multiple different species that we share the planet with. It's important because I think to recognize sentience in individuality, as far as individuality, as far as behaviors go and things like this, it opens up your world to understanding that actually we are surrounded by things that are really no different from us. So this information is already out there, but I'm going to be going through quite a lot of the videos on different social media sites and removing them, basically cleaning up the whole thing. So I'm going to just start again. So any questions that you want answered about these guys, just fire away. Even if I've done a video about it before, just fire away.